Yes. No. Should I put it in the announcement group?
Huh?
Should I add it to the announcement group every week?
I think I know, but I didn't see it today.
No, I usually don't.
Huh?
I usually don't. I don't like putting too many announcements. But I can put it.
You don't do the announcement group?
Yeah, I do. I can put it. I haven't though.
Oh yeah, I was asking if she can add to the announcement group because
Yeah.
she's not on it.
Okay, خلاص. I'll add it inshallah.
I add it.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So we had ended our discussion last week saying that can shyness be a weakness, and we had said that yes. In what situations would shyness be considered a weakness? I'm sorry? Yeah, so we said that shyness in general is a strength. It's something that should be practiced. It's something that is very important to us in our religion. It's something that's very indicative of our iman and the relationship that it has. So the question then comes is like, are there situations where shyness can actually be harmful?
Yeah, if you're asked to lead, you have to lead.
Right, so yes, absolutely. So if there are situations where I'm actually deserving to lead, right, or I'm deserving to speak, or I'm deserving to do a particular job, and I don't do it, that is where shyness can be a hindrance, and that's where shyness is a problem. And we had mentioned before also that when I don't step into those roles, someone else is going to fit, right? Because the moment I don't do something, I have created a vacuum, right? I've created a vacuum, and it's amazing how it's called a vacuum. You know why? Because somebody's going to get sucked in, right? There is going to be someone that takes that position. And at the least, I think I was having this conversation with Ilyas, right? At the least, if I'm taking that position, what do I know? I know that about myself, that I can fulfill this responsibility. Is it necessary that I fulfill it in the best way? No. I just know I can do it. And if I come across someone who can do it better, what do?
Be humble.
Then that's where humility comes in. But the shyness and the hayā that I have, it shouldn't press me from stepping forward. And my modesty should be enough where I know when to pull back and step back. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us all of these different characteristics so that we know when to utilize them. We have different tools that are available to us that allow us to navigate our relationships and how we interact with others, how we interact with institutions, how we interact with just on a general level. And it's important to understand those things so that we are successful both spiritually and even in a worldly sense. So over here, he gives the example of you might witness a sin from an elder and feel shy to rebuke them due to respect for their age, which is good shyness, but it's better to be shy of Allah and not neglect enjoining good. So what is he saying here? In this example, what is the message he's trying to give us?
Don't just shy away from.
Like you said, if you're younger and because they're older, you shouldn't be shy or pull back.
So he's saying that when I see somebody elder to me, or maybe even someone who I perceive to be more knowledgeable than me, and I see them doing something that I know is wrong.
You should speak up.
That's what he's saying, right? He's saying that you should speak up, but what happens normally? It's like maybe he knows something I don't, right? You know what I mean? Like we start making excuses for that age gap, saying that
You should ask and make sure.
right? So that's something that we should engage in, even though he's saying that normally that type of shyness is fine. Why? Because when it comes to dealing with people who are elderly, we should what?
Respect.
Right, we should respect them, and not just that. If we find them to be harsh or difficult or mean, we should what? Not necessarily challenge. Like I think we should have a little bit more tolerance, and we should learn to overlook. I think fragility has become like a big problem in our communities, where we cannot deal even with the slightest criticism. This is a big problem. This is a big issue. We can never navigate relationships. We can never navigate conversation. We can never navigate business if we don't learn how to. I'm not saying that we should be punching bags, right? No, nobody's saying that, we should allow ourselves to be abused. But we should allow ourselves to be...
Review
Yeah, we should allow ourselves to be pushed and to be challenged, right? Because if I'm never challenged, what am I going to feel about my ideas?
Oh, I'm right. I'm good.
I'm right. If I constantly surround myself with people, every time I say something, they're like, "Oh yeah, amazing. Yes, queen." Like, you know what I mean? Like, you keep hearing those things. What am I going to feel about myself? Right? It's just going to constantly reinforce. And the moment somebody disagrees with me, what am I going to do?
Attack them.
Right? I'm going to start attacking them. I'm going to throw a tantrum. And it's amazing how the only group of people that when you challenge them throw a tantrum are generally children. And now it's when we look, especially like on social media and like, different places, we're like, oh man, they're acting like children. Why? Because they never had the opportunity to grow up. Even this idea of safe spaces and like, when I say safe space should be one where I'm not abused. It should be one where I'm not hurt, right? Or I won't even say that. It should be one where I'm not allowed to either take abuse or abuse others. And that I agree with 100%. But if I disagree with someone and it's possible that I get hurt, did that person do anything wrong?
No.
No. Because those friction points, when we disagree with people, those are meant to be points of growth for me.
It's healthy, actually.
Right? It's something that's healthy. How do I know if I'm honest, I'm upright, I'm brave, if I cannot stand up for somebody who I disagree with? It's really easy to stand up for those people who I agree with, right? And it's like, these are the people who I want to stand with. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes us Muslims, He describes us as ikhwa, right? He describes us as brothers, and we don't get along with all of our brothers. And that's something that's natural. We don't have to. Am I obligated to be friends with every Muslim I come across? No, absolutely not. And very honestly, there are some Muslims who I probably want to avoid and who I don't want to be around. And there's nothing wrong with that. When does that come into play? If I see him being oppressed, if I see her being attacked, right? That's where I need to step up, regardless of how I feel about that person as an individual. But the only way for me to get to that point is understanding and engaging and debating, right? These are all healthy ways for us to engage with each other. Like, otherwise, we'll never learn to converse. We'll just constantly be walking around with just reinforcing all the things, the ideas that we have. All this does is inflate the ego. That's it. That's all it does. It doesn't help create a healthy Muslim individual, father, mother, brother, sister, or whatever. So we have to learn to embrace that. Like, we need to learn to let our skin thicken just a little bit, right? Not so much that we allow ourselves to be abused, because that's not allowed either. But we need to understand, like, a little bit of friction is fine. So over here, a strong person prioritizes shyness from Allah over shyness from people, while a weak person may not manage that. These are the reasons that it's permissible to conceal faults and sins. So it's important for us to conceal fault and sins for a number of reasons, which we've spoken about. And he's going to mention a few more. So I should be shy, not just in sinning, but I should also be shy in sharing that sin. Because one of the things that I fear is that I become an example for others. And this is right? We don't want to normalize sin. This is something that's really important. We should never be in a position where we allow sin to be normalized, because it'll encourage other people to do that. And it's amazing how you openly allow it. So there's a difference between openly talking about something. Is it possible that I give a talk on zina? Right? I'm openly discussing and talking about it. Does that mean I'm making it okay? No. This becomes a problem when you have someone who's like, oh, I've been with all of these women, XYZ, and they're very proud of their actions and what they've done.
Openly talking about what they did or done.
Like proud of it, I would say it there, right?
Proud,
Right. Versus just talking, right there. There's context that's there, but being proud of their sin, being proud of drinking alcohol, a big problem in today's society. Being proud of being gay, right? These are all big issues, and these are all big problems. And you'll find that the more proud people are of vices, the bigger problems in society we have, because sin starts to become normalized. You start seeing diseases that weren't prevalent before. You start seeing interactions that weren't prevalent before. You start seeing a spread of ideology and thought that wasn't there before, right? All of these things, they stem from that same normalization of sin. So, I'm not saying that these things don't happen. Historically, even during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, did people commit zina? Yes. Like we have three cases of public zina where they came forward and they said, I committed zina, Ya Rasulullah. And these are people who came forward. So this also tells us that there are people who didn't, who concealed it. There are people who drank alcohol. People who were, there was corporal punishment. They were punished for drinking alcohol. People who were tail carrying and doing namima. People who were backbiting, right? It's not like sin there's never a point in history, even Islamic history, even from the best of people, where you don't have sin, right? That just didn't happen. There's a very famous story of a young man and a young woman. They used to go to the masjid and they used to go late. And why did they go late? Because the rows of the men, they start from the front and they move back. And the later I go, the closer I'm going to be to the women. And the rows of the women, they start from the back and they move forward. And the later I am, the closer I'm going to be to men. So these two purposely used to go late, just so they could look at each other during salah. I'm not going to get into the discussion of the partition, right? But anyway, so the point is like, okay, you have situations like this where like people historically used to sin. What is the difference? The sin was not normalized. It was committed and it was performed. It wasn't accepted. And when you start living in a society and you start living in a place where it is accepted and you start standing and start supporting and like, you know what I mean? This becomes a big problem. And we end up confusing ourselves, or we end up confusing our children, or we end up confusing the community. So it's important for us to always, understand that this is a very, it's a really bad domino effect. The moment we allow one, you start allowing, it just keeps going and you start allowing more. So here he mentions that this reason is relevant when it comes to displaying acts of obedience. Remember we talked about one of the reasons that we do actions publicly, why we give sadaqah or why we might pray in public. Why do we do those things?
Doing the actions publicly.
Yeah.
To encourage and be
to set an example, right? You want to encourage others, you want to set an example, you want to teach, right? These are all different ways and all different means for us to engage so that we can be a good example for others and so that we can encourage others, especially if it has to do with family, right? Especially if it has to do with people who are close to us, because these are the people who are most important to us. He said, for this reason, it's also appropriate for a sinner to conceal their sin from their family and children, as they might learn from them. So just like you can teach them good, it becomes very easy to teach them bad. There are people, for example, who maybe are foul-mouthed, right? Maybe they use bad language. But when you talk to them at home, what happens? Right? You don't hear that, right? You don't hear that. It's like, you were just, you know what I mean? But why do they do that? Because they don't want their children. Yeah. Is it fair to say that this person's a hypocrite?
No. Concealing something that they feel.
Right. It's something that they don't want to do. Or maybe they smoke, right? And every time they go home, they will put on some perfume and they'll make sure that they don't smoke at home. It's important for us to understand, sometimes we wear different hats. Some people take this for hypocrisy. But if I know that I'm dealing with a certain group of people, even he, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the way he dealt with people, sometimes he was kinder than he was at other times. And even Aisha radiallahu anha, she asked when he was speaking about Dhul Khuwaisara, she said to him, Ya Rasulullah, you were just talking so poorly about this man, but you dealt with him so nicely.
Yeah.
Because the reality is, we have to deal with everyone regardless of how because he sallallahu alaihi wasallam was telling her how he felt about this individual, but he still dealt with him in a kind way, nice way, to show that it doesn't matter what I feel or what we feel about people. Sometimes we have to put on a face.
Like a diplomat,
Yeah, we have to be diplomatic.
So basically, that person cannot take something got to be a certain way.
This is interesting. Why should I be diplomatic as a Muslim? If I'm working at a job, for example, and I have a bad experience, How come the day I leave, I don't just curse everyone out and I walk out?
Because people take an example out of you too.
Right, people can take me as an example, right? And then you'll have like a chain, you know what I mean, quitting, and everybody curses on their way out. What's another possibility?
You're reflecting Muslims too.
Okay, let's say I'm in a Muslim environment. Let's say I'm in a Muslim country. I'm sorry? Right. Do I know what's going to happen tomorrow? Right, 2 years down the line, 10 years down the line. A lot of times we don't know. And how much more humiliating is it, you know, to be in a place like where you're cursing everyone out, you're putting everyone down, and you're like, I'm out of here. And then a few years later, you're walking through the door with your application. I think this idea of self-control, not knowing the future, it should help us understand, like, we should do the best that we can not to burn bridges. Even if we like really hate people, even if we really dislike them, even if we don't want to be in that space. And if I don't want to be in that space, I should try to leave as quietly and as quickly as possible. Because wallahu alam, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. And it's part of being a forgiving person, right? Learning how to manage those things. So I knew this Imam, and one of the people who he had worked with, their wife actually submitted a complaint against him. So she wrote a letter to like the board and like, you know, all this and that. The complaint didn't go anywhere because the board actually liked the Imam. And then he sent a message, and I was like, okay, well, what's going on? It's like, yeah, I need this from him because her husband is a specialist in this particular field. And I was like, okay, but didn't his wife just like, didn't she try to get you fired? He was like, yeah, but this is what I need, and this is the person who it's like, okay, but what about what, you know, his wife and stuff did? I was like, I don't talk about it. I was like, wow. It's right? You know what I mean? It's like, wow, that's interesting. But subhanAllah, you just don't know. Yeah. It's a different person. But he knew the husband supported her. Because he didn't say anything to her, right? He's like, oh, you know, you shouldn't have done that. That was wrong. Or he didn't stop her from writing the email. But at the end of the day, well, you never know who you're going to need to contact. You never know what resources you have. And not just that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says about us as people, He says, خُلِقَ النَّاسُ ضَعِيفًا, right? Like we're all weak. And without support, we can never really get anywhere. I think I had mentioned this last week, but like even the word anisa, like, you know, which is one of the roots for insan, it's like because we're social, like we need that softness, like we need that, you know, to be involved with other people, like we need those social groups, like we need other people. And if we want to be successful as individuals, we need to create as many safety nets and as many social networks as we can. Because the more nets that we have, then it becomes that much, like the fall is much softer. Versus like if I only have like one safety net, what's going to happen? Right? I mean, it might not catch me. It might not, seriously, it might not be strong enough to catch me. Yeah, I'll give this one example, inshallah, and then we'll end. I was leading a Hajj group one year, and there was this young woman who was in the group, and their mufti of the group, he had said like, oh, it's okay to leave Mina early. So Mina, you have to stay at least 2 nights. And he was like, yeah, you can leave early, it's not a problem. And we're going to stone early and leave. So she asked me, and she was like, is this okay? I was like, no. I don't know where he got this fatwa from. Like, this is really, really weird, really odd. And she was like, man, but if I don't go with the group, I'm not going to catch my flight. Like, I have to get back. I was like, okay. I was like, listen, you don't have to, like, because you're not staying the next night, I was like, just pay the fidya. Like, pay the blood. Like, pay the blood money, you know, by slaughtering, and inshallah, you'll be okay. I came to find out later, she went with them to stone early. She asked somebody else to stone on her behalf. She also paid.
Cover your tracks, man.
Yeah, create as many networks. So, you know, I mean, create as many safety nets as we can, because it just makes the fall that much softer. Nobody likes falling on their face, and we all will fail. We all will get hurt. We all will not succeed in everything that we do. And the more we can cushion that fall, the easier it is to get up and to continue and to keep moving and to pivot. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq. Inshallah, I'll see you guys next week. And I'll start putting the announcements in the announcement group.
We have a question. The council with their sin and their family so that they can,
So they can learn from them. So even if the family finds out, for example, that he smokes, but they never seen him smoke, what did they learn? That even if I am doing something wrong, I should hide it.
unless I tell them.
Yeah, I mean, you shouldn't tell them, but but I'm saying if I'm doing something wrong and I hide it from my family and my family finds out, then my family would learn that, okay, even if he does something wrong, they hide it. In most families, I know that have like a father that smokes and he doesn't like want the family, like he doesn't want his kids smoking. They all know, right? They'll smell it on his clothes, or they'll know, or like they're like, or he'll step out and they're like, oh, Baba went to smoke again, even though he doesn't do it in front of them. Like they've never actually seen him smoke, but they're like, oh, you know, but you know what they learned? They learned like, okay, well, at least he's embarrassed of doing that, and it'll teach us that it's okay for us to be, you know what I mean? Like if we're doing something wrong, yeah, we should hide it.
So not to expose.
Yes, not, don't make it normal.
Not to expose.
Yes, yeah. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq. Wallahu a'lam wa sallallahu ala khayri khalqin nabiyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi. Jazakumullah khair. Can we get some help with the chairs, please? How many chairs do we need to leave here? After Salah.
I think it's better to put the group on the
Okay.
announcement. because-
Khalas, no problem.
And then you can add him.
Inshallah. This is right here.
I said, what page you want to go to?
If you go that so much.
No, is it really? No.
Not a joke.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
استووا واستقيموا واعتدلوا الله أكبر الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. قال هذا رحمة من ربي فإذا جاء وعد ربي جعله دكاء وكان وعد ربي حقا وتركنا بعضهم يومئذ يموج في بعض ونفخ في الصور فجمعناهم جمعا وعرضنا جهنم يومئذ للكافرين عرضا الذين كانت أعينهم في غطاء عن ذكري وكانوا لا يستطيعون سمعا أفحسب الذين كفروا أن يتخذوا عبادي من دوني أولياء إنا أعتدنا جهنم للكافرين نزلا قل هل ننبئكم بالأخسرين أعمالا الذين ضل سعيهم في الحياة الدنيا وهم يحسبون أنهم يحسنون صنعا أولئك الذين كفروا بآيات ربهم ولقائه فحبطت أعمالهم فلا نقيم لهم يوم القيامة وزنا ذلك جزاؤهم جهنم بما كفروا واتخذوا آياتي ورسلي هزوا الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات كانت لهم جنات الفردوس نزلا خالدين فيها لا يبغون عنها حولا قل لو كان البحر مدادا لكلمات ربي لنفد البحر قبل أن تنفد كلمات ربي ولو جئنا بمثله مددا قل إنما أنا بشر مثلكم يوحى إلي أنما إلهكم إله واحد فمن كان يرجو لقاء ربه فليعمل عملا صالحا ولا يشرك بعبادة ربه أحدا. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.